Senator, let's delve more fully into the food versus fuel thing. I see Oil World magazine suggests that governments are going to have to scale back their biofuels mandates because they're not sustainable given the current balance of grain supply versus demand. Do you see the U.S. backing away at all from the targets that have been established in the energy bills and from the incentives?
Well, I hope not, and let me tell you why. I read about the riots over the price of food. It's bread in Egypt, and it's rice in China, in Thailand, and maybe other places where they have some riots. But I don't see any. I saw a little bit of concern in Mexico maybe 3 months ago on tortillas. Is that what you call them? Tortillas? Tortillas. We don't make ethanol out of rice and out of wheat. So I'm not sure that I understand, except ignorance on the part of people, about the connection between making ethanol and making and food. Because I could set a bucket full of corn in front of those people from the IMF a week ago that were complaining, and they wouldn't know what to do with it any more than I would know what to do if Eskimos set a pail full of blubber in front of me. So I'm not very sympathetic to it at this point. When they start getting a connection between corn and food, then I'll be glad to listen, and I am listening to the Mexicans. But if part of our problem is that the Chinese are going to eat meat, and you got to have corn and soybeans to feed the Chinese their meat, then why isn't it just as legitimate for the Chinese to go back and eat rice as it is for us to change our policy on corn to ethanol?
Well, how about the claim that government incentives cause farmers to divert food grain acreage into corn, and that contributes to the food grain shortage?
There's a lot of truth to a lot of government programs that have distorted the market in agriculture. And if we hadn't had 70 years of a safety net for agriculture, you could make an argument if you go back 70 years, we made a mistake 70 years ago. But we're locked into some of the safety net stuff, and there's going to be some distortion of the market. But don't forget that just the high price of grain has capitalized into land as much as maybe a target price was capitalized in the price of land. So you got the marketplace to some extent. And the other thing is, if you need more rice for people to eat, you're not going to convert corn acreage to rice. Philip Breiser?
Senator, I want to follow up on something you just said, but I also want to ask you about the Farm Bill. Do I understand you to say that the developing world should, or China in particular, should give up on improving their diets?
Let me go back.
Ethanol from corn.
Let me say it let me repeat it in the rhetorical form that I ask it. People are pointing to the United States, right? That we ought to not use corn for ethanol. That's after 25 years of people all over the world saying we ought to move from fossil fuels to renewable fuels. So we do what the world asks us to do. Now the world is concerned about we're doing that. It might raise the price of food. Well, one of the factors that raises the price of food is the fact that the middle class of China is eating meat instead of rice. So as a matter of public policy, isn't it just as right for Chuck Grassley to say to the Chinese, if you're contributing to the shortage of food because you're running your food through animals now, so you can eat like we do in the United States? Why isn't it just as reasonable for me to say, why don't you go back and eat rice instead of asking us to change what we've been asked to do for 25 years? I'm not saying that they ought to. I'm saying it's legitimate for me to raise that as a question, just as it is legitimate for them to raise the question of corn to ethanol.